Hey everybody, thank you for joining us. This is a very special week of midweek worship at Two Cities Church. Hey guys, my name is Jeff, and we created this broadcast way back at the beginning of COVID to help connect people to the church and to connect people to Jesus. And if you want to know more about why this church exists or why midweek worship exists, look below me in the notes to this post. You'll see a link to a video that will tell you all about what we're doing and why we're doing it. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about this covenant promise, this blessing promise that God made with his servant Abraham. Now, most people all over the world recognize the name of Abraham. Actually, God changed his name. It used to be Abram, and then he changed his name to Abraham. Today, what we're going to look at is God's covenant promise to Abraham. And Jews recognize Abraham as the father of the faith. Muslims, billions of them all over the world, will recognize Abraham as a father of the faith. And Christians, of course, recognize Abraham as a father of the faith. Why do so many people all over the world that have differing belief systems recognize Abraham as the father of the faith? Well, we're going to look at that in just a second. We're going to see a very powerful promise that God makes to Abraham, but not just to Abraham, to everybody who turns to Abraham as kind of a father figure, air quotes, father figure in the faith. Now, I want you to understand something about what we're discussing today. We're talking about God working in the world that he created. We're talking about God entering into a relationship with the people that he created. We call that word for relationship a Bible word called covenant, which is a special relationship. It's a contract for life where God says, I'm going to keep my end of the bargain and I want you to keep your end of the bargain. But the kind of contract that we're talking about in this episode is a covenant of grace, meaning God made a gift to Abraham. Abraham didn't do anything to earn it. Abraham didn't deserve it. In fact, later on in the Bible, it says only after Abraham believed in this gift, the gift or his relationship with God, was Abraham considered righteous. In other words, when God first entered into this relationship, Abraham brought nothing to the equation. Abraham didn't have anything to offer God, nor do you, nor do I. It's important for us to keep that in mind because sometimes we can start to think, hey, I'm a pretty big deal. Well, when you think about entering into a relationship with God, I don't bring anything to the equation. You don't offer anything to God that he needs. God only does this because he's a good God, because he's a loving Father, and because he wants to give gifts, the gift of grace, to his children. So we're going to look at this covenant gift that God describes to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12. I want to set this verse up, and then I'm going to ask you to personally memorize this verse along with the rest of Two Cities Church this week. In Genesis chapter 12, God comes down onto earth, and he actually enters into a blood covenant, into a contract with one of his creation, with a man. God causes Abraham to fall into a deep sleep, and in the middle of this sleep, God enters into this agreement with Abraham. And when Abraham wakes up, Abraham realizes that wasn't a dream. That really happened. God really did come and meet with me, and he really did enter into this relationship. Well, here's the promise that God makes. Listen to this, not just to Abraham. He makes it to all of those that would ever come after Abraham on these conditions. If you bless Abraham, I'm going to bless you. If you curse Abraham, I'm going to make life difficult for you. I'm going to put it on the screens. Genesis 12, verse 3. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who treat you with contempt. Or your Bible may say, curse those who curse you. All the families on earth will be blessed through you. Genesis 12, verse 3. That last sentence is talking about you. It's talking about me. It's talking about your grandparents, and it's talking about your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren that come after you. This was a promise, not just for one man in time. It was for all human beings that would ever come after Abraham. And the promise has to do with Jesus. In fact, what I want you to know about Abraham is that this covenant promise that God makes to Abraham, he keeps through Jesus. And now, because of Jesus, every person, any time that they've ever lived, any place on the earth, can now have a personal relationship with the God who created them. God says, Abraham, I'm going to do something for you, something that Abraham would have understood very well. God says, I'm going to be your father, Abraham, and I'm going to pass my blessing on to you. In Abraham's day, parents blessed their children when they sent them from the home. And that blessing the children longed for, they kept as a cherished memory for the rest of their life. Some cultures in the world today still do a family blessing. And because Two Cities Church has people watching from around the world, maybe you live in a country where it's still a very strong tradition to do a family tradition or family blessing. But my guess is many of you come from parts of the world where that doesn't even exist anymore. Nobody in your family does that. Nobody even remembers what that was like in your family. But my guess is if you trace your family back far enough, there was a generation where parents blessed their children. I'm going to put a lesson, just a little exercise that I want you to do as part of this episode today. I'm going to put it on the screens. I want you to think about it. If you have your family gathered around the tablet or the TV, I want you to talk about it. And then after we do this, I'm going to introduce you to a song that I hope will drive into your mind what we're talking about today. Here's what it says right up there on the screen. Explain the family blessing that was passed on to you. I want you to notice why this is worded this way. Because maybe for you, there was no family blessing passed on. Your parents didn't have the first idea what a blessing was, nor did they pass that on to you. And their parents didn't know what it was, so they didn't pass it on to your parents. That may be the family that you came from. But maybe you came from a family that did have some concept of a family blessing and parents passing a blessing on to their children, like in Abraham's day. What we're reading about in Genesis chapter 12 about Abraham is God as his father passing a blessing on to Abraham that will last for all of human history. And now I want you to think real hard, if you're a parent or even a grandparent, about introducing a family blessing into your family culture or into your family traditions. Maybe your children have already grown. Maybe they've already left the house. That's not too late to introduce a blessing to them. And the blessing really needs to explain your hopes for them and for their future. I won't tell you what the blessing needs to be, but I do want you to think deeply about this. Because a family blessing is a very powerful moment and often a memory that will last for an entire lifetime. So we're going to do something a little bit different. I told you at the very beginning, we're going to end this broadcast different. Instead of asking our friends from South Africa, Pete and Alicia, to lead us in some music, we're going to watch a music video from people all over the world. Because we're a very much global church with people tuning in from all over the world, I want people all over the world to sing about the blessing. In fact, the song is called The Blessing. And it was recorded at a church not far from where I live in the United States with a group of people in the room. But that song started to get attention all over the world, and then people from all over the world started to record this song. I want to end the broadcast today with this global choir singing the song, The Blessing, from Elevation Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. And as you hear this song, I want you to think about what a blessing in your family might look like, what that family tradition might be. Even if your children are grown, even if you have grown grandchildren, it's not too late. Watch this video, and then I hope you have a great week. See you back here next time.